In the opulent world of Jonathan Clark's mansion, Maria Lopez once cleaned under the weight of her unspoken heartbreak. When she became pregnant with Jonathan's child, his reaction was harsh and cold, leading him to fire her without a second thought. He never offered support, leaving Maria to face the world alone with her son Gabriel. Years later, the truth of Gabriel's parentage emerges, igniting a journey of justice and reconciliation. As Gabriel, now 15, uncovers a photograph of his estranged father, he is filled with a mix of anger and resolve. He demands accountability for the pain and struggle Maria endured, and together, they decide to confront Jonathan. With a lawyer's help, they embark on a challenging legal battle to hold Jonathan responsible and secure the recognition and support they deserve. From the quiet determination of a mother and son to the daunting task of confronting a powerful man, their story unfolds with both hope and trepidation. Join them as they seek justice and reclaim their dignity in the face of past betrayals. If you are not subscribed, I recommend you subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss any videos. Before we dive into this story, please let me know in the comments where you're watching from. In the luxurious expanse of Jonathan Clark's mansion, Maria Lopez moved with a grace born of years spent in silent servitude, her cleaning cloth deftly traversing the gleaming surfaces of the grand living room. The opulence of the room was marked by the unmistakable sense of lemon polish and fresh flowers, fragrances that had become a bittersweet reminder of her time in this elegant prison. As she worked, Jonathan's voice drifted from the hallway, his tone confident and commanding, though the words were lost in the muffling distance. Every time Maria heard the familiar timbre of Jonathan's voice, a surge of distress gripped her heart, an involuntary reaction that she had learned to recognize but could not control. It had been weeks since their last confrontation, the day she had been forced to reveal her pregnancy. That moment etched deeply into her memory, replayed with relentless precision. Jonathan's response had been nothing short of callous. "This is unacceptable," he had said, his voice reverberating with a cold detachment as he paced his spacious office, the walls closing in around her as she stood frozen, a victim of his cruelty. "It will destroy everything, my family's reputation, my standing in society. I will offer you a sum of money, but you must depart immediately." The promise of compensation had never materialized, leaving Maria to grapple with the harsh reality of abandonment and betrayal. Her hand stilled on the polished mahogany table as the sound of Jonathan's approaching footsteps shattered her reverie, pulling her back into the present. She resumed her cleaning with mechanical precision, her movements now devoid of the earlier grace. Her eyes remained lowered, her focus on the task as a means to shield herself from the emotional weight of her surroundings. Jonathan entered the room, still absorbed in his phone conversation, his presence indifferent to the woman who toiled beneath him. To him, Maria was merely a part of the furniture, an invisible servant whose existence was of no consequence. "We need to ensure those contracts are finalized by Friday," he said into the phone, his voice fading as he walked briskly down the hallway. The sharp click of a door closing marked his retreat into the sanctuary of his office, leaving Maria in the wake of his callousness. As Maria exhaled a slow, weary breath, a complex blend of relief and simmering frustration swirled within her. She hurried to complete her chores, driven by an urgent need to escape the mansion and the haunting echoes of its memories. Now, 15 years later, Maria stood in the cramped, cozy confines of her modest kitchen, the warm and comforting aroma of sizzling onions filling the air. The kitchen, in stark contrast to the grandeur of Jonathan's mansion, was small and cluttered, with countertops strewn with a haphazard array of dishes and grocery bags. As she moved efficiently through her cooking routine, chopping vegetables with practiced ease and stirring a bubbling pot on the stove, the scents of garlic and tomato sauce began to replace the distant, painful memories of lemon polish and Jonathan's commanding voice. If you're still tuned into this video and find the story inspiring, drop a 1 in the comments to let me know you're still with me. Her teenage son, Gabriel, now 15 and rapidly growing into his own, sat hunched over the kitchen table, deeply engrossed in his schoolwork. His dark hair fell over his furrowed brow as he concentrated, a picture of youthful determination amidst the modest surroundings of their home. The sight of Gabriel, so engrossed and full of potential, brought a complex mix of pride and sorrow to Maria's heart, highlighting the stark contrast between her past suffering and the present simplicity of their lives. "Hi, sweetheart," Maria greeted, her voice a blend of forced warmth and maternal affection as she set her weathered bag down with a gentle thud. She immediately turned her attention to preparing dinner, her movements swift and practiced. The kitchen was a stark contrast to the grandeur of Jonathan Clark's mansion, a modest, cluttered space that bore the marks of years of hard work. The countertops were strewn with dishes and grocery bags, a testament to the relentless rhythm of everyday life. Maria's hands, skilled from countless repetitions, moved with purpose as she sliced vegetables and stirred a simmering pot on the stove. Each movement was a reflection of her dedication to creating a sense of normalcy despite the turbulence of her past. Gabriel, sitting at the table, watched her with a penetrating gaze. At 15, he had grown tall and lean, inheriting his mother's dark eyes and thick, unruly hair. His usual playfulness was absent tonight, replaced by a serious demeanor that made Maria's heart thump with unease. "Mom, can we talk?" Gabriel's voice broke through the comforting hum of the kitchen, carrying an undertone of urgency that immediately caught Maria's attention. Startled, Maria's hands faltered mid-slice, the knife poised above the vegetables. She glanced over her shoulder, meeting Gabriel's intense gaze. Her heart fluttered with a mix of apprehension and dread. "Of course," she responded, her voice steady but laced with caution. "What's on your mind?" Gabriel moved deliberately, reaching into his backpack with a solemn air. He retrieved a photograph and placed it gently on the table between them. The photograph was a relic of a bygone era, capturing a moment from her past that Maria had tried so hard to leave behind. As she looked at it, her breath caught in her throat. It was a picture of her and Jonathan, taken many years ago at a lively party. The memory of that evening, filled with laughter and a fleeting sense of security, now seemed almost like a cruel joke. The carefree smile on her face in the photograph stood in stark contrast to the pain she felt as she gazed upon it now. "Where did you find this?" Maria asked, her voice tightening with an edge of panic. "In one of your old boxes," Gabriel replied, his tone revealing a mix of curiosity and something deeper. "I was searching for old family photos for a school project." "Mom, is this man? Is he my father?" Maria's heart sank as she heard the question, her shoulders slumping under the weight of the truth she had tried so hard to shield Gabriel from. The photograph, a tangible link to the past, now lay between them, a symbol of secrets and unspoken pain. She had hoped to keep the truth buried, to protect Gabriel from the harsh reality of his father's abandonment. But now, with the image staring up at her and Gabriel's piercing gaze fixed on her, the truth seemed unavoidable. "Yes," Maria admitted softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Jonathan Clark is your father." Gabriel's eyes widened in shock, a whirlwind of emotions crossing his face. Anger, betrayal, and confusion flickered across his features like a storm. "Why didn't you tell me?" he demanded, his voice rising with a mixture of hurt and frustration. "Why did you keep this from me?" "Because I didn't want you to get hurt," Maria said, her voice breaking as tears welled in her eyes. "Jonathan, he didn't want us. When I told him I was pregnant, he fired me from my job. He refused to support us, to be a part of our lives." Gabriel's face grew stormy, and he stood up abruptly, pushing his chair back with a harsh scrape against the floor. "So, all these years he just ignored us, pretended we didn't exist. We were nothing to him." Maria nodded, the tears now spilling freely down her cheeks. "Yes, Gabriel. He chose to ignore us, to pretend we were invisible. It was easier for him to live his life without acknowledging the pain he caused." Gabriel's expression shifted from anger to a deep, aching sadness. He looked around the tiny, cluttered kitchen, the reality of their lives suddenly more poignant than ever. Maria watched him, her heart aching as she saw the hurt reflected in her son's eyes. The small, warm kitchen, with its simple comforts, stood in stark contrast to the cold indifference of Jonathan's world. At that moment, Maria felt a profound sense of loss, not just for the dream she had once harbored, but for the innocence of her son, who now faced the harsh truths of their fractured reality. "Okay," Maria said quietly, her voice firm with newfound determination. "We'll take action. I'll find a lawyer. We'll make sure he faces the consequences and takes responsibility for his actions." Gabriel's face softened, the storm of anger in his eyes slowly giving way to a look of relief and gratitude. "Thank you, Mom," he said, his voice tinged with a mixture of hope and appreciation. As they settled down for dinner, an unspoken resolve settled over them. The secret that had been hidden for so long was now laid bare, and with it came a sense of finality. The path ahead was uncertain, but Maria felt a peculiar mix of relief and trepidation, knowing they would face this challenge together as a family. Later that evening, Maria sank onto the well-worn couch in their modest living room. The faded fabric, though threadbare and patched in places, was a source of comfort, its familiar texture offering a sense of security. Her hands rested in her lap, the weight of the day's revelations settling heavily upon her. She watched as Gabriel, unable to sit still, paced restlessly across the small room. His nervous habit running his hands through his hair was a mirror of her anxious tendencies. The room was steeped in a thick silence, filled with the echoes of unspoken questions and unresolved feelings. Gabriel finally stopped pacing and turned to face her, his expression one of deep hurt and confusion. "Why didn't you ever tell me about him?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper but carrying a weight of unrelenting insistence. "I've asked about my dad for years. Every time you told me he was gone, that he didn't want anything to do with us. Why?" Maria looked at her son, her heart aching at the sight of his pain. She had spent so many years trying to shield him from the harsh reality of his father's abandonment, believing that ignorance was a form of protection. But now, facing the consequences of that choice, the burden of her decision felt overwhelmingly heavy. "I thought it would be better if you didn't know," Maria said softly, her voice trembling with regret. "I wanted you to have a normal life, free from the pain of knowing that your father, that he chose not to be part of it." Gabriel's jaw tightened, a mix of anger and disappointment flickering in his eyes. "But I had a right to know, Mom. He's my father. He should have been there for me. You should have let me decide how to feel about him, rather than keeping it a secret." Maria sighed deeply, her shoulders slumping under the weight of his words. "I understand," she admitted, her voice laden with sorrow. "Maybe I was wrong to hide the truth from you. I didn't want you to feel rejected or unworthy. I was just trying to protect you from the pain of his absence." Gabriel's posture softened slightly as he crossed his arms, his gaze dropping to the floor. "You did everything on your own," he said quietly, his voice filled with a mix of awe and sadness. "You worked so hard to provide for us, and I never really appreciated how much you sacrificed. I was so focused on what I didn't have. I didn't see everything you gave up to make sure we survived." Maria's heart ached as she listened to Gabriel's words, the enormity of his realization striking her deeply. She reached out, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. "We both had to make sacrifices," she said gently, "but now we can move forward together. We'll face this new chapter as a family, and hopefully find some semblance of justice and closure." The room, once filled with silence and tension, now held a fragile hope. As they continued their meal, the conversation shifted, but the underlying sense of unity and resolve remained, guiding them toward an uncertain yet hopeful future. Gabriel's expression hardened once more, a fierce resolve lighting up his features. "That's not fair," he said, his voice edged with frustration. "He can't just ignore us like this. He's my father, and he should be held accountable for what he did." If you're still tuned into this video and find the story inspiring, drop a 2 in the comments to let me know you're still with me. Maria looked at her son, feeling a complex mix of pride and sorrow. Gabriel's strength of character was unmistakable, reflecting her stubborn resolve. She knew that once he set his mind on something, he wouldn't back down easily. "What do you want to do, Gabriel?" she asked quietly, her voice carrying a hint of apprehension. "How do you want to handle this?" Gabriel sat down beside her, his demeanor serious and focused. "We need to confront him," he said firmly. "He needs to understand that he can't just walk away from us. I want to meet him face to face, talk to him, and make him pay for what he did to you, to us. He needs to know the consequences of his actions." Maria hesitated, her mind racing with anxiety at the thought of confronting Jonathan. The idea of reopening old wounds and facing Jonathan's likely resistance was daunting, yet she could see Gabriel's determination was unwavering. Perhaps it was time to confront the past and stop evading the painful reality. "All right," Maria said slowly, her voice resolute but soft. "If this is what you truly want, I'll support you. I'll find a lawyer who can help us navigate this. But you need to be prepared, Gabriel. Confronting Jonathan won't be easy. He's powerful, and he will do everything in his power to avoid facing his responsibilities." Gabriel nodded, his eyes glinting with a blend of anger and determination. "I know it won't be easy, but I don't care. I need to do this for us. He can't keep pretending we don't exist." Maria reached out and enveloped Gabriel in a tight embrace. The warmth of the hug was comforting, and for a fleeting moment, she felt a part of the heavy burden lift from her shoulders. They were united in this battle now, and that shared resolve made the future seem a bit less overwhelming. As they slowly released each other, Maria looked at her son and managed a faint, yet genuine smile. "We'll start tomorrow," she said with newfound resolve. "I'll find a lawyer who can guide us through this process. We'll make Jonathan face the truth, and we won't rest until he does." Gabriel's smile softened, his gratitude evident. "Thank you, Mom," he said quietly, his voice filled with heartfelt appreciation for everything. Maria nodded, feeling a sense of renewal and determination blossom within her. For years, she had been paralyzed by the fear of confronting Jonathan, dreading the upheaval it might bring. But now, with Gabriel by her side, the prospect of facing the past seemed less formidable. Together, they would seek justice, and that unity made the daunting task ahead seem a little more manageable. The future, while still uncertain, now held the promise of resolution and the chance to reclaim their lives from the shadows of the past. After dinner, Gabriel retreated to his room, leaving Maria alone with a swirl of thoughts and emotions. She sank onto the couch, her gaze fixed on the photograph of her and Jonathan that Gabriel had uncovered. The photo was a relic of the past, its edges frayed from years of handling. Maria studied Jonathan's face, the easy, confident smile, the way his arm had rested casually around her shoulders. It was a snapshot of a time when life seemed simpler, before the betrayal, before the gnawing loneliness had settled into her heart. Maria gently placed the photograph back into the box and closed the lid, her fingers lingering on the worn surface. She knew that tomorrow would usher in a new set of challenges, but for now, she allowed herself a moment of respite. With a sigh of weary relief, she turned off the lights and headed to bed. The weight of the years seemed a bit lighter, knowing that they were taking control of their future. No matter what obstacles lay ahead, they would face them together, united in their resolve. The following morning, Maria stood before a plain gray door marked with a brass plaque that read Linda Parks, attorney at law. The modest law office was nestled in a quiet corner of the city, a world away from the sleek glass towers and bustling streets where Jonathan conducted his business. As she adjusted the collar of her blouse, Maria felt a knot of apprehension twist in her stomach. This was the beginning of a difficult journey, and despite her determination, the fear remained palpable, lurking just beneath the surface. She turned to Gabriel, who stood beside her, his expression one of steadfast resolve. "Are you ready?" Maria asked softly, her voice betraying a trace of her nervousness. Gabriel met her gaze with unwavering certainty. "Yeah, Mom, we've got this." Maria took a deep breath, gathered her courage, and reached for the door. The office was small but inviting, with an air of calm professionalism. Behind a cluttered desk sat a woman in her mid-40s. She looked up as they entered, offering a warm and reassuring smile that immediately put Maria at ease. "You must be Maria and Gabriel," the woman said, rising from her chair and extending her hand in greeting. "I'm Linda Parks. Please come in and have a seat." Maria shook Linda's hand, feeling a reassuring firmness in the attorney's grip. Gabriel followed suit, and together they took their seats in front of Linda's desk. The office, though compact, was neatly organized, filled with books and neatly stacked legal papers, giving it a sense of industriousness and order. Linda settled into her chair, folding her hands on the desk as she turned her attentive gaze toward Maria. "I reviewed the brief details you provided over the phone," Linda began, her tone professional yet compassionate. "Why don't you go ahead and tell me more about your situation? What are your main concerns, and what outcome are you hoping for?" Maria took a deep breath, steadying herself. "Well, Linda, as you know, Jonathan Clark, the father of my son Gabriel, abandoned us many years ago. He promised support but never followed through. Now, Gabriel has found out the truth and wants to confront him, seek justice, and hold him accountable for his actions." Linda nodded thoughtfully, her expression reflecting empathy and understanding. "I see. And Gabriel, is there anything specific you'd like to achieve through this process?" Gabriel looked up, his eyes filled with a mix of determination and vulnerability. "I want to make sure he understands the impact of his actions. I want him to take responsibility for what he did to both my mom and me. We need to address the past and find some resolution." Linda's gaze softened as she listened to Gabriel's heartfelt words. "Thank you for sharing that. This is important to both of you. We'll start by gathering all the relevant information and building a case that addresses your concerns. This process might be challenging, but I'm here to guide you through every step." Maria felt a flicker of hope as Linda spoke. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one where they would confront the past and seek justice. The path ahead was uncertain, but with Linda's support and Gabriel's unwavering resolve, they were ready to face whatever came next. "I used to work for Jonathan Clark as a maid," Maria began, her voice steady but carrying an undercurrent of emotion. "About 16 years ago, we had an affair. When I discovered I was pregnant with Gabriel, I informed Jonathan. He didn't take the news well." Linda's eyes were sharp with focus as she leaned forward. "What exactly did he say?" Maria hesitated, the memory of Jonathan's cold, detached words flooding back. "He said that having a child would ruin everything, his family, his reputation. He offered to pay me off to disappear quietly. I refused. I thought maybe he'd come around and take responsibility. Instead, he fired me. There was no severance, no support, nothing. Gabriel's jaw clenched as he listened, his fists balling at his sides, but he remained silent, allowing his mother to recount the painful details. I wrote to him and called him repeatedly, but he never responded. I was left to fend for myself, to raise Gabriel alone. I took any job I could find just to keep a roof over our heads. Linda nodded, her pen moving quickly across the legal pad as she took notes. And you're seeking to file a lawsuit for child support and wrongful termination. Yes, Maria replied, her voice gaining strength. Jonathan has ignored us for far too long. Gabriel deserves to know his father, and Jonathan should be held accountable for his actions. Linda set down her pen and regarded Maria with a look of determination. You have a strong case, Maria. We can pursue child support based on Jonathan's income, which given his status is likely substantial. The wrongful termination claim is also valid, considering the circumstances surrounding your dismissal. We'll need to gather all relevant evidence, any correspondence, records, and potential witnesses who can support your claims. Maria nodded, feeling a flicker of hope. I have a few letters I kept from when I tried to reach out to him, and some of the other staff at his house. They might be willing to talk. They were aware of the situation, even if it was never officially acknowledged. Excellent, Linda said, her voice firm and reassuring. We'll start by filing the suit and requesting Jonathan's financial records through a subpoena. Once we secure a court date, we'll prepare you and Gabriel for the proceedings. Be aware that these cases can become quite personal, and Jonathan's legal team will likely attempt to discredit you. You both must be prepared for that. Gabriel, who had been quietly absorbing the discussion, finally spoke. His voice was resolute, betraying none of the uncertainty that might have plagued him moments before. What can we expect during the process? How long will this take? Linda looked at Gabriel, her expression thoughtful. The duration of the case can vary. It will depend on how quickly we can gather evidence, Jonathan's response, and the court's schedule. It could take several months to a year or more, but the key is to remain patient and stay focused on the end goal. Maria placed a comforting hand on Gabriel's shoulder, squeezing gently. We'll get through this together. Whatever happens, we're doing the right thing. We're standing up for ourselves, for what's fair. Linda smiled encouragingly. Exactly. And remember, I'm here to guide you through every step of the process. We'll work hard to ensure that Jonathan faces the consequences of his actions and that Gabriel receives the support he's owed. As they prepared to leave, Gabriel gave his mother a reassuring nod, his resolve clear. Maria felt a renewed sense of purpose. Though the road ahead was daunting, having taken this crucial first step, she felt a glimmer of hope. They were no longer powerless, they were reclaiming their narrative, one determined step at a time. I'll start drafting the lawsuit, Linda said decisively. In the meantime, gather any evidence you have, letters, records, anything that proves your employment and the nature of your relationship with Jonathan. We need to build a strong case. I'll also begin reaching out to potential witnesses, Maria said, her mind already racing through the names of those who might be willing to help. She remembered some of the former maids who might still be in contact, and even a few of Jonathan's associates who had been privy to their relationship. Linda stood, signaling the end of their meeting. I'll be in touch soon with the next steps. We're starting a fight, but it's a fight we can win. Just remember, it won't be easy. Jonathan will use his power and resources to try to intimidate us, but we won't back down, Linda said, her voice firm with resolve. Gabriel stood and extended his hand to Linda, his grip strong and confident. Thank you, Miss Parks. We're ready to do whatever it takes. Maria followed suit, shaking Linda's hand with equal firmness. Thank you, Linda. We appreciate your support more than you know. Linda smiled, a glimmer of determination in her eyes. I believe in justice, Maria, and I believe in standing up for what's right. We'll make sure Jonathan Clark faces the truth. As Maria and Gabriel left the office, a strange mix of fear and relief settled over them. The gravity of their undertaking was starting to sink in. This wasn't just about Gabriel anymore, it was about reclaiming Maria's dignity, confronting the man who had wronged her, and demanding justice for the pain and hardship they had endured. Outside, the sun shone brightly, casting a warm glow over the bustling city streets. The energy of the city seemed to pulse with a rhythm of its own, a stark contrast to the heaviness of their emotions. Maria and Gabriel walked side by side, their steps synchronized but weighed down by the enormity of their decision. "Do you think we'll win?" Gabriel asked, breaking the silence between them. His voice was tinged with both hope and apprehension. Maria looked at her son, seeing the unwavering determination in his eyes. "I don't know what the outcome will be, Gabriel, but I do know this: we're not alone anymore. And that's a start." Gabriel nodded, a small smile beginning to form on his lips. "I'm proud of you, Mom." Maria felt a surge of warmth and affection. "I'm proud of us both. No matter what happens, we're facing this together, and that means everything." As they continued their walk, Maria felt a sense of resolve settle within her. The path ahead was uncertain and fraught with challenges, but the support of her son and their newfound commitment to justice made the future seem a little more manageable. With each step, they moved closer to confronting the past and reclaiming their lives. As Maria and Gabriel continued down the bustling street, each step felt laden with purpose. The upcoming fight was formidable, but for the first time in a long while, Maria felt a flicker of hope. They were taking control of their narrative, a victory that, in itself, was a significant achievement. Back at home, Maria stood at the kitchen sink, her hands immersed in soapy water as she scrubbed the remnants of dinner from the dishes. The window above her framed a panoramic view of the city's skyline, glittering with the lights of office buildings and apartments, a stark contrast to the turmoil within her. She tried to focus on the repetitive rhythm of washing and rinsing, but her thoughts kept drifting back to the earlier meeting with Linda Parks. The decision to file the lawsuit loomed over her like a heavy shroud, a potent blend of anticipation and trepidation. It felt like she was standing on the precipice of a great unknown, ready to leap into the abyss. If you're still tuned into this video and find the story inspiring, drop a 3 in the comments to let me know you're still with me. Suddenly, the sharp ring of the telephone cut through her reverie. Maria dried her hands hastily and reached for the receiver, her heart racing. "Hello." "Maria, it's Linda." The lawyer's voice was brisk but tinged with an urgency that set Maria on edge. "I need you to brace yourself. The lawsuit has been filed today, and it's already attracting significant media attention. Reporters may start showing up at your apartment or Gabriel's school. I apologize for the sudden intrusion, but this is the nature of high-profile cases like this." Maria's stomach churned. The swiftness of the unfolding situation was overwhelming. "I didn't realize it would escalate so quickly," she said, her voice betraying her anxiety. "What should I do?" "Remain calm and composed," Linda instructed. "Do not engage with any reporters. Direct them to me if they contact you. We need to manage the narrative carefully. I'll be issuing a statement on your behalf that will stick to the core facts: your wrongful termination, Jonathan's refusal to support his son, nothing beyond that. Stay strong, Maria. This phase will pass." Maria nodded, even though Linda couldn't see her. "Thank you. I'll be cautious." After hanging up, Maria remained standing, her mind racing to absorb the reality of the situation. The thought of media intrusion was both daunting and distressing. The idea of having reporters camped outside her door, cameras thrust in her face, filled her with unease. She didn't want to be thrust into the spotlight. She simply sought justice for Gabriel and herself. As if summoned by her anxiety, a sharp knock echoed through the apartment. Maria's heart skipped a beat, and she exchanged a worried glance with Gabriel, who had come to stand beside her, his face etched with concern. Maria took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. She walked towards the door, each step echoing her mounting apprehension. With a trembling hand, she reached for the handle and slowly opened it, bracing herself for whatever lay beyond. Standing on the other side was a reporter, camera in hand and microphone extended, along with a photographer who was already positioning their camera. The reporter's eyes were bright with the eagerness of fresh news. "Ms. Lopez," the reporter began, "can you comment on the lawsuit against Jonathan Clark?" Maria's pulse quickened. The word she had been dreading to hear had finally come. She took a deep breath, remembering Linda's advice. "I'm not making any statements at this time. Please contact my attorney, Linda Parks, for any inquiries." The reporter's expression shifted from eagerness to disappointment, but he nodded. "Thank you for your time, Ms. Lopez." As Maria closed the door, the weight of the moment settled heavily on her shoulders. The fight had begun in earnest, and the road ahead would be fraught with challenges. But as she turned back to Gabriel, she saw the determination in his eyes, and it gave her the strength to face whatever came next. They were in this together, and that unity was their greatest weapon. Maria's hand trembled as she gripped the doorknob, the weight of the situation pressing heavily on her shoulders. She took a deep breath to steady herself, then spoke through the closed door, her voice resolute. "No comment. Please leave." The reporter's voice, persistent and probing, pierced through the barrier. "Maria, this is your chance to tell your side of the story. Jonathan Clark wields a lot of influence in this city. Don't you want people to hear what you have to say?" "I said no comment," Maria repeated, her voice carrying a firmer edge. She waited, listening intently for the sound of footsteps retreating down the hallway. Once she was sure the reporters had left, she stepped back from the door, releasing a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Gabriel emerged from his room, his face reflecting concern. "Who was that?" he asked, his eyes scanning her for clues. "Reporters," Maria said, striving to keep her tone steady despite the anxiety swirling inside her. "They wanted to ask about the lawsuit. I told them to leave." Gabriel's eyes widened in disbelief. "They're already here. This is insane." "It's going to be like this for a while," Maria said, her voice tinged with resignation. "Linda warned me that Jonathan's case would attract a lot of attention. We just need to stay calm and not engage with them. Linda will manage everything." Gabriel nodded, though his expression was clouded with frustration. "I hate that they're treating this like some sort of spectacle. This is our life, not a show." Maria walked over to him and pulled him into a comforting embrace. "I know, Gabriel. It's difficult, but we can't let their presence intimidate us. We're doing the right thing. And remember, this isn't about public opinion or sensationalism. It's about achieving justice." The next morning, Maria woke up early, the events of the previous day still vivid in her mind. She followed her usual routine with a sense of mechanical detachment, making breakfast and packing Gabriel's lunch. Outside, she could hear the low murmur of voices, the unmistakable hum of a crowd gathering. As she opened the door to leave, she was met with a small cluster of reporters stationed on the sidewalk. Cameras clicked rapidly, and microphones were thrust toward her as she stepped outside. "Maria, can you tell us why you decided to sue Jonathan Clark now, after all these years?" one reporter asked, their voice sharp with curiosity. "Is it true that you were fired because of your relationship with him?" another shouted, their tone accusatory. Maria felt her heart race. The barrage of questions felt like a relentless assault, their intrusion into her private life starkly invasive. She took a deep breath, trying to summon the calm she had practiced. "I have nothing to say right now," she said firmly, her voice steady despite her inner turmoil. "Please direct all inquiries to my attorney." With that, she turned and walked briskly toward the street, determined not to let the media's presence deter her from the path she had chosen. Gabriel followed closely, his expression a mix of anger and determination. As they made their way to the car, Maria's mind was racing with the enormity of the journey ahead. The public scrutiny was only the beginning. The real challenge would be navigating the legal battle and facing Jonathan Clark and Quaison. But she clung to the hope that, with Gabriel by her side and Linda Parks guiding them, they could find justice and reclaim the life they deserved. Maria's pulse quickened as she maneuvered through the throng of reporters, keeping her gaze fixed firmly ahead. The relentless barrage of questions mixed into a chaotic blur of noise, each inquiry a sharp reminder of the scrutiny they were under. She felt Gabriel's hand squeeze hers tightly, a silent gesture of solidarity amidst the chaos. At the bus stop, Gabriel turned to her, concern etched on his face. "Are you okay, Mom?" Maria forced a reassuring smile, though her heart raced with a blend of anxiety and determination. "Yes, I'm fine. It's just a lot to handle right now, but we'll get through this. Remember, don't talk to anyone about the case no matter who asks, okay? Not even your friends." Gabriel nodded solemnly. "I won't say a word. I just want to focus on school and pretend this whole mess isn't happening." Maria watched as Gabriel boarded the bus, his posture tense and burdened by the weight of their situation. As the bus pulled away, she felt a pang of guilt gnawing at her. Had she made the right decision by pursuing the lawsuit? Yet, as her mind replayed Jonathan's cold indifference and the years of silence, her resolve strengthened. This battle was not just about the past, it was about securing a future where they could live without the shadow of injustice hanging over them. Back in the courtroom, Maria faced a new challenge. The room was filled with an oppressive silence as the opposing counsel, Simmons, questioned her on the stand. The attorney's voice was laced with skepticism, aiming to undermine her resolve. "Isn't it true, Miss Lopez, that you're simply trying to exploit Mr. Clark's success?" Simmons asked, his tone dripping with disdain. "No," Maria said, her voice steady despite the weight of the accusation. "This lawsuit is not about money. It's about seeking justice. It's about my son knowing the truth and receiving the support he rightfully deserves." Simmons's smirk faded, and he simply replied, "No further questions, Your Honor." As Maria stepped down from the stand, she felt an intense mix of exhaustion and defiance. Gabriel was waiting for her, his hand reaching out to grasp hers. "You did great, Mom," he whispered, his voice full of pride. Next, Linda called Rosa to the stand. Rosa's testimony was poised and articulate, providing a clear account of the relationship between Maria and Jonathan. She detailed the day Maria was abruptly fired, emphasizing the suddenness in Jonathan's behavior leading up to the dismissal. Carla also took the stand, corroborating Rosa's testimony. Her account added depth to the atmosphere in the mansion, the rumors circulating among the staff, and the palpable sense of injustice when Maria was dismissed without notice. Maria listened intently as the testimonies unfolded. A sense of hope mingled with the lingering anxiety. The courtroom, once a place of relentless pressure, now seemed to offer a glimmer of justice. As the day progressed, Maria and Gabriel faced each challenge with unwavering determination, knowing that their quest for justice was far from over but feeling more confident with each step forward. Linda stood before the courtroom with a calm yet commanding presence. Her closing argument was not just a summary of the case, it was a passionate appeal for justice. This case, she began, her voice steady and filled with conviction, is not about wealth or reputation. It's about the fundamental principles of accountability and responsibility. She glanced toward Jonathan, who was seated with his legal team, his posture rigid and unyielding. Maria Lopez came forward not to seek monetary gain, but to demand what is rightfully hers and her son's. She fought through years of silence and hardship to stand here today, to confront the man who, despite his position of power, chose to disregard his obligations and the consequences of his actions. Linda's gaze shifted back to the judge. Mr. Clark's attempts to distance himself from the truth are evident. His denial of a personal relationship with Maria, despite the compelling evidence and testimonies, shows a blatant refusal to take responsibility. The sudden termination of Maria's employment following her revelation of pregnancy, coupled with his failure to provide any support, speaks volumes about his disregard for the consequences of his actions. She took a deep breath, her eyes scanning the courtroom filled with rapt attention. We've presented letters, testimonies, and undeniable proof of the betrayal and negligence faced by Maria. We've shown the emotional and financial strain that resulted from Mr. Clark's decision to sever ties rather than fulfill his paternal responsibilities. Maria and her son have endured enough. They have sought justice, not for revenge, but for acknowledgement and rectification of wrongs. Linda's voice softened, yet it carried a potent emotional weight. Imagine for a moment being in Maria's position, facing a powerful figure who refuses to acknowledge the impact of his decisions. This isn't just about a lawsuit. It's about standing up against injustice and ensuring that no one else has to endure such a betrayal in silence. We ask that the court consider not only the legal obligations but also the moral imperatives involved. As Linda concluded, the courtroom seemed to exhale collectively, the weight of her words hanging in the air. Maria felt a surge of hope and resolve, her heart pounding with a mix of anticipation and trepidation. The judge called for a recess, allowing time for the jury to deliberate. Maria and Gabriel stood together, a united front against the forces of their past. The tension was palpable as they waited, the future uncertain but filled with the possibility of a long-awaited justice. In the quiet moments between the court sessions, Maria and Gabriel found solace in each other's presence. Gabriel, though still troubled, showed a quiet strength that mirrored his mother's resilience. Maria's heart ached for the uncertain outcome but swelled with pride at the courage they had both shown. When the jury returned, the courtroom was filled with a heavy silence. The judge addressed the court, his voice measured and deliberate. "The jury has reached a verdict. We will now hear the decision." Maria held her breath, her hand gripping Gabriel's tightly. The moment of truth was upon them, and whatever the outcome, it would mark the end of a long and arduous journey. Gabriel nodded, his expression resolute but tinged with anxiety. "I'm nervous, but I'll do my best. I just want this all to be over so we can move on." Maria reached out and took Gabriel's hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. "You've been incredibly brave through all of this. Just tell the truth and remember, you have nothing to fear. You're speaking up for yourself and us." If you're still tuned into this video and find the story inspiring, drop a 4 in the comments to let me know you're still with me. Gabriel took a deep breath and nodded, visibly steeling himself for the challenge ahead. Maria watched as he made his way to the bus stop, his posture more confident than before. She hoped her words had given him some measure of comfort. As Maria prepared for the day ahead, she received a call from Linda Parks. "Maria, I wanted to give you a heads up. Gabriel will face intense questioning today. We've prepared him as best as we can, but he needs to stay calm and focused." "I understand," Maria said, her voice steady despite the anxiety she felt. "I'll be there to support him, and I'll try to keep it together." Linda's voice softened. "You're doing great. Just remember, the truth is on your side. We'll get through this." With renewed determination, Maria headed to the courthouse, her thoughts focused on Gabriel and the strength they needed to see this through. When she arrived, the courthouse was abuzz with activity. Reporters were still camped out, but Maria managed to navigate through the crowd and find her way inside. The courtroom was quiet as Gabriel took the stand, his face pale but determined. Maria watched from the gallery, her heart pounding with a mix of pride and worry. Linda approached Gabriel with a calm, reassuring presence. "Gabriel," Linda began, "can you tell the court what happened when you found out about your father?" Gabriel took a deep breath and began to recount his experience, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I found an old photograph and asked my mom about it. She told me who he was and that he was my father. I was upset because I didn't know about him, and I felt like he didn't care about me or my mom." Linda listened intently, nodding encouragingly. "How did this make you feel?" Gabriel's eyes met Linda's, and he spoke earnestly. "It made me feel angry and confused. I couldn't understand why he didn't want to be part of my life or take responsibility. I just wanted to know the truth." Linda's questions continued, drawing out Gabriel's story with sensitivity and precision. The courtroom remained silent, absorbing the gravity of Gabriel's testimony. Mr. Simmons, Jonathan's lawyer, began his cross-examination. His questions were sharp and intended to challenge Gabriel's credibility. "Gabriel, are you aware that your mother's lawsuit might be motivated by financial gain rather than a genuine grievance?" Gabriel met Simmons's gaze with resolve. "No, it's not about money. It's about knowing the truth and holding my father accountable. It's about getting justice for what we've been through." Simmons pressed further, trying to cast doubt on Gabriel's understanding of the situation. "But do you understand the implications of this lawsuit? It's a complicated legal matter." Gabriel's voice remained steady. "I might not know all the legal details, but I understand that my mom has worked hard and sacrificed a lot. We deserve to be heard, and we deserve to know why things happened the way they did." After the intense questioning, Gabriel stepped down from the stand, looking both drained and relieved. Maria rushed over to him, pulling him into a tight embrace. "You were amazing," she said, her voice thick with emotion. Gabriel hugged her back, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "Thanks, Mom. I just want this to be over." As the day drew to a close, Maria and Gabriel left the courthouse, the weight of the day's events pressing down on them. They knew there was still a long way to go, but they felt a renewed sense of hope. No matter the outcome, they faced the challenge together, standing up for what was right. The journey was far from over, but Maria felt a surge of pride as she walked beside Gabriel. They had made it through another tough day, and as they looked toward the future, they did so with the strength of their shared resolve and the support of those who had stood by them. Gabriel's voice quivered slightly but remained resolute. "I want to know why he didn't take responsibility, why he chose to ignore me and my mom for all these years. I want him to understand that his actions had real consequences and that his decision to reject us affected my whole life. And I want him to be held accountable for that." Linda looked at Gabriel with a mixture of respect and sympathy. "Thank you for sharing that with us, Gabriel. Is there anything else you'd like to add about how this has impacted your life and your relationship with your mom?" Gabriel glanced over at Maria, who gave him a small, encouraging nod. "It's affected everything," Gabriel said. "My mom worked so hard to provide for me and make sure I was okay. She's done everything she could to make sure I had a good life, even when things were really tough. I want this to be over. But more than that, I want her to know that she did the right thing by standing up for us. We both deserve to be treated with respect." Linda gave Gabriel a reassuring smile before turning to the judge. "No further questions, Your Honor." The judge nodded, signaling the end of Gabriel's testimony. As Gabriel left the stand, Maria rose from her seat and walked over to him, wrapping him in a tight hug. She felt a wave of pride and relief, knowing how difficult this moment had been for him. "Great job," Maria whispered. "You were amazing up there." Gabriel hugged her back, his expression a mix of exhaustion and determination. "Thanks, Mom. I just hope it makes a difference." The courtroom remained silent as the day drew to a close. The judge announced a brief recess before the final arguments would begin. Maria and Gabriel retreated to a quiet corner, away from the eyes of the reporters and other spectators. Linda approached them, her expression thoughtful. "Gabriel did an excellent job today. His testimony was powerful and heartfelt. Now we'll prepare for closing arguments. We'll summarize the evidence and make a compelling case for justice." Maria nodded, feeling a surge of hope. "Thank you for everything you're doing, Linda. I know this is a tough fight, but we're grateful for your support." Linda smiled reassuringly. "We're in this together. Just stay strong. The next steps will be crucial." As the day came to an end, Maria and Gabriel headed home, the weight of the trial still heavy but tempered by their shared resilience. They knew the road ahead would be challenging, but they faced it with newfound strength and unity. Back at the apartment, the evening was quiet. Maria and Gabriel sat at the kitchen table, their usual dinner left untouched. They talked about their day, Gabriel's testimony, and their hopes for the upcoming verdict. "Whatever happens," Gabriel said, his voice steady, "I'm just glad we faced this together. It's been tough, but we've done everything we could." Maria nodded, her heart full. "Yes, we have. And no matter the outcome, we've shown that we're stronger than any challenge. We've faced the truth, and we've done it with dignity." They shared a quiet moment of understanding, the bond between them stronger than ever. They were ready for whatever came next, knowing that their fight for justice was far from over, but confident that they would face it together, united and yielding. Simmons smirked, his lips curling into a condescending expression. "So this whole ordeal is about principles, or is it merely a quest for financial gain? Isn't it true that your mother had the option to seek child support years ago but chose not to?" Gabriel's face turned a deep shade of red, his emotions boiling over. She refrained from pursuing that path because she wanted to avoid unnecessary conflict. She was determined not to exacerbate an already difficult situation. "However, I'm the one who urged her to bring this case to court because I needed to uncover the truth and pursue a sense of justice. This isn't solely about money. It's about holding him accountable for his actions." Simmons attempted a final maneuver. "You mentioned feeling resentment towards Mr. Clark. Could it be that some of that bitterness is directed at your mother for failing to provide a stable father figure in your upbringing?" Gabriel's response was firm and resolute. "Not. My mother has been my unwavering pillar of strength. She has given everything to ensure I was well cared for. The anger I harbor is directed solely at Mr. Clark's choices and his neglect, not at my mother. She has always been my steadfast supporter, and I am acutely aware of that." Simmons raised an eyebrow, but with no further queries, he fell silent. Gabriel descended from the witness stand, his relief palpable yet shadowed by lingering tension. As he returned to his seat, Maria enveloped him in a heartfelt embrace, her admiration for his courage glowing in her eyes. The courtroom hummed with hushed conversations as the judge called for a recess. Maria and Gabriel sat together in quiet contemplation, the gravity of the day's proceedings settling heavily upon them. Linda, with a reassuring smile, exuded confidence in their cause, her faith in their quest for justice unwavering. When the recess concluded and the court resumed, Maria's spirit was rekindled with a newfound optimism. Gabriel had bravely voiced his truth, and now the path of justice awaited its course. Regardless of the final verdict, Maria felt assured that they had fought valiantly for themselves and Gabriel's rightful claims. The judge's analysis of the case, taking into account the revelation of pregnancy, testimonies from former employees, and the absence of supporting documentation for performance issues, led to the conclusion that M. Lopez's termination was unjustly influenced by her relationship with Mr. Clark and her pregnancy. Maria experienced a profound sense of relief at the judge's ruling, a significant but still partial victory. She turned to Gabriel, who offered her a small, hopeful smile, reflecting a glimmer of hope for the future. A collective gasp reverberated through the courtroom, a sound that seemed to hang in the air like a tangible presence. Maria felt an overwhelming rush of emotions as tears welled up in her eyes, each drop carrying a torrent of relief, joy, and sheer disbelief. Her heart, once heavy with the weight of unspoken hopes and long-fought battles, now pounded with an exhilarating mixture of triumph and gratitude. She turned to Gabriel, who stood beside her, his face illuminated by a radiant grin that spoke volumes. His eyes sparkled with an intense, unrestrained emotion that mirrored her own. "Mom, we did it," Gabriel whispered, his voice choked with a profound mixture of elation and disbelief. The words came out in a trembling breath, the enormity of their victory still sinking in. Maria, unable to find her voice, simply nodded, her throat constricted by the magnitude of the moment. The years of silence, the relentless struggle, and the deep-seated pain they had endured had finally given way to this moment of truth. They had been heard, and justice had triumphed. Judge Whitman's authoritative voice cut through the emotional crescendo, his tone steady and resolute. "I trust that this verdict brings some semblance of resolution to both parties involved. Mr. Clark, it is my sincere hope that you will approach your obligations with the seriousness and responsibility they deserve." The court is adjourned. The gavel descended once more with a finality that seemed to resonate through the room, and chaos erupted in its wake. The courtroom, once a realm of tense silence, was now filled with the clamor of excited reporters, flashing cameras, and the animated buzz of spectators eager to process the outcome. Maria felt herself enveloped in a tight embrace by Linda, who stood there beaming with pride and admiration. "You did it, Maria." Linda's voice was filled with a powerful surge of emotion. "You stood up for what was right, and you won. I am so incredibly proud of you." Her words were a balm to Maria's weary soul, offering a moment of solace and celebration amidst the whirlwind of activity. "Thank you," Linda Maria managed to reply, her voice thick with emotion, the words barely making it past the lump in her throat. "I couldn't have done it without your unwavering support." Gabriel, his eyes shining with profound gratitude, turned to Linda and added, "Thank you for believing in us. Your faith was a beacon of hope." Linda's face softened into a gentle, encouraging smile. "You both showed immense strength and resilience. This victory is yours, and you have earned every bit of it." As the courtroom buzzed with the aftermath of the verdict, Maria's attention was drawn to Jonathan, who stood somewhat apart, engaged in a subdued conversation with his lawyer. His face was pallid, the lines of stress and anxiety etched deeply into his features. Samantha, his wife, stood close by, her posture rigid and her arms crossed defensively. Her eyes, filled with a storm of emotions ranging from anger to disappointment, bore into Jonathan. For a fleeting moment, their eyes met, and Maria caught a glimpse of what seemed to be regret, or perhaps a dawning realization in Jonathan's gaze. She couldn't help but wonder about the complex emotions swirling within him, whether he was feeling shame, anger, or a mix of both. Jonathan turned away, his steps measured as he moved toward the exit. Samantha walked beside him, their proximity underscoring a palpable distance between them, their hands not touching. Maria watched them depart, a sense of closure settling over her. The realization that Jonathan's life would forever be altered, just as hers had been years ago, was both sobering and satisfying. The truth, once veiled, was now laid bare, and Jonathan could no longer cloak himself in the shield of his reputation or wealth. Linda guided Maria and Gabriel out of the courtroom, their path marked by a blend of triumphant relief and quiet contemplation. The day's events had etched a profound change in their lives, and as they stepped out into the world beyond the courtroom, they carried with them the weight of their hard-won victory and the promise of a new beginning. "It's over, Mom. We did it," Gabriel said, his voice filled with a profound sense of relief and triumph. Maria's face softened into a serene smile, a wave of peace washing over her. "Yes, we did. We finally did," she replied, her voice steady yet filled with deep emotion. It was a moment she had dreamed of for so long, and now it was a reality. Back at their modest apartment, Maria and Gabriel settled at the kitchen table, a place steeped in memories. It was here, in this very spot, where they had first discussed the possibility of finding Jonathan, the father Gabriel had never really known. The sunlight poured through the window, casting a warm, golden hue over the room, illuminating their faces with a soft, hopeful glow. Maria felt an unprecedented lightness, as though a heavy burden had been gently lifted from her shoulders. If you're still tuned into this video and find the story inspiring, drop a 5 in the comments to let me know you're still with me. "What now?" Gabriel inquired, his voice tinged with curiosity and a hint of apprehension. Maria took a moment to gather her thoughts, her mind swirling with the possibilities that lay ahead. "Now we move forward," Maria responded thoughtfully. "We use this new beginning to improve our lives. We focus on your education and on building a future filled with promise. We've been through so much hardship, but this is our chance for a fresh start." Gabriel nodded, his expression thoughtful as he considered the path ahead. "Do you think he'll ever try to be part of my life?" he asked, his voice carrying a mix of hope and uncertainty. Maria paused, weighing her words carefully. "I don't know, Gabriel. That's something only Jonathan can decide. But regardless of his choices, remember this: you know who you are, you understand your worth, and you have a family that loves and supports you. Gabriel's smile grew wider, a sense of reassurance settling over him. You're right, Mom. We don't need him to be happy. We have each other, and that's more than enough. Maria pulled Gabriel into a heartfelt embrace, her arms wrapping around him with warmth and affection. Yes, we do. And that's truly more than enough. As they sat together in the comforting embrace of their shared space, Maria felt a profound sense of hope for the future. They had faced their past, confronted their fears, and stood up for what was right. The challenges that lay ahead seemed surmountable now, as they had discovered their inner strength and resilience. For the first time in a long while, Maria felt a genuine peace settle within her. The truth had been revealed, justice had been served, and now it was time for them to embrace the life they had fought so fiercely to reclaim. Weeks after the verdict, Maria began to feel the weight of years of struggle lifting. The child support payments that had been secured offered a glimmer of financial stability. Maria and Gabriel started to plan for a brighter future. With the burden of debts easing, Maria looked into enrolling Gabriel in a better school. They discussed Crestwood High, renowned for its robust science program and dynamic sports teams. Gabriel's eyes lit up with excitement at the prospect of joining such a promising educational environment. One sunny morning, Rosa, a dear friend, visited them, bringing along a vibrant plant as a housewarming gift to celebrate their new chapter. As they sat together over coffee, the conversation flowed with ease and warmth. Rosa's presence was a comforting reminder of the support system that surrounded them, reinforcing the sense of community and friendship that Maria cherished deeply. The days that followed were filled with small but significant changes. Maria diligently worked on paying off lingering debts and began to explore educational opportunities for Gabriel with renewed vigor. The prospect of a fresh start, bolstered by their hard-won victory, infused their days with a sense of optimism and anticipation. As they navigated this new phase of their lives, Maria and Gabriel embraced each step with hope, knowing that they had overcome immense obstacles and were now moving towards a future brimming with potential. Later that evening, as they cozied up on the couch for a movie, Gabriel glanced at Maria with a hint of curiosity. Mom, do you think Jonathan might try to be part of our lives now? His voice carried a mix of hope and uncertainty, reflecting the emotional complexity of the past few weeks. Maria took a deep breath, her gaze thoughtful as she considered her response. I don't know, Gabriel. That's something only Jonathan can decide for himself. But no matter what happens, remember this: we will face whatever comes our way together. We've proven our strength and resilience, and that's what matters most. We don't need him to be happy. We have each other, and that's more than enough. Gabriel nodded, a reassuring smile touching his lips. You're right, Mom. Having Jonathan isn't necessary for our happiness. We're a team, and we'll make our way. The following morning, Maria woke up feeling a renewed sense of energy and optimism, fueled by the promise of a fresh start. At breakfast, she and Gabriel discussed their plans for the future. They talked about enrolling Gabriel in a new school, one that offered a wealth of opportunities and possibilities. Gabriel was excited about the prospect, his enthusiasm contagious. They also explored the idea of starting a garden, a way to cultivate something beautiful and meaningful together. As they strolled through the neighborhood, Maria's attention was drawn to the community center. A vibrant flyer advertising an art class caught her eye, and she felt a pang of inspiration. It was a reminder of her long-forgotten passion for art, a hobby she had set aside amidst the demands of life. Feeling a renewed sense of purpose, Maria decided to sign up for the class, eager to reconnect with something she once loved. Back at home, Maria eagerly shared her new plans with Gabriel. His eyes lit up with excitement as he suggested they also enroll in a cooking class together. The idea of learning new skills and exploring new interests as a family invigorated them both, filling them with anticipation for the adventures ahead. That night, as Maria lay in bed, she reflected on their journey with a deep sense of gratitude. They had faced numerous challenges, but each trial had only made them stronger and more united. Their past struggles no longer defined them. Instead, they were looking ahead with hope and enthusiasm. The future seemed bright and full of possibilities, and Maria felt an overwhelming sense of appreciation for the love and strength that now defined their lives. As sleep began to take its gentle hold, Maria's heart was filled with a profound sense of contentment. She knew that no matter what lay ahead, they had built a foundation of resilience and love that would carry them through. The promise of a fulfilling future, shaped by their shared dreams and renewed passions, awaited them with open arms. As we wrap up today's journey, let's take a moment to reflect on the profound lessons we've explored. From facing adversity with unwavering strength to embracing new beginnings with hope and determination, we've seen how resilience and love can transform our lives. I'd love to hear from you. What is one key takeaway from today's video that you plan to incorporate into your own life? Share your insights in the comments below, and let us know how you'll put these lessons into practice. If you found this video inspiring, please leave a comment, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content like this. Your support helps us continue to bring valuable and uplifting content to you. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in our next video.